Hello and welcome everybody to a new interview for our History International Film Festival Austria. I'm here today with Tyler Mendelson, producer and director of The Hun. So Tyler, if you'd be so kind to tell us what your film is about.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. The Hun is a World War I short film. It takes place in the trenches in 1918. It features a young American soldier who has just become his company's message runner, and it sort of follows the drama that ensues from having such a role in the war. And it also delves a little bit into myth and the sort of storytelling that soldiers would kind of tell each other, and it delves into the history of the area as well that these soldiers were fighting in. Coincidentally, it delves into like Attila the Hun fighting the Romans, and how coincidentally it was all like in that same area. And basically the whole message is that war is hell, and there's no real enemy besides death. And I think World War I is a perfect example of that. It was just an onslaught of absolute terror that, is just unimaginable by today's standards.
How did you come up with this specific scenario? Because making a film about the tragedy of warfare could be set in any other time just as well.
Yeah. So before I made this film, you've kind of seen an uptick in World War I films as of right now. I made this film a year before 1917 came out, which is like sort of when we started seeing that shift. And my whole mindset was, I grew up with World War II and Vietnam films, and I'm a huge history buff, and I love studying war, and I'm a veteran myself, so it's something that's close to me. And I wanted to, I knew we were coming up on the centennial, the 100-year anniversary of World War I, and I wanted to pay tribute to those soldiers who fought, and so many who died in that war. So I really just wanted to honor them with this film. And we didn't really see too many American films about World War I. We've seen, a lot of the European side, which is understandable because they were in the war longer. But as an American and an American veteran, I wanted to sort of tell an American story.
Yeah, thanks. And the film is probably also, you've shot it in America, I assume,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, we shot it in upstate New York.
Have you been especially interested in this specific time before you started your research or your ideas, your gathering of ideas for this film?
So I was mainly a quote unquote student of World War II. That's like ever since I was a little kid, I've loved learning about World War II. And as I grew older, I found so much more about World War I to be interesting, because it was sort of the point in time that shifts between the old way of fighting wars and the new way of fighting wars. And we just see this rapid advancement of technology that we had never seen before. So just, I delved into so many books and stuff to learn more about it, and I just found it absolutely, invigorating and interesting.
How did you get in contact with all the other people who worked with you together on this project?
So I knew some of them, as far as a few of the actors and crew members from back home who I knew who did film. And I was a student at Emerson College in Boston, Massachusetts at the time. And I basically held a casting call there for cast and crew. And I found a great group of people who I'm still friends with today. So I was really grateful to find them.
Are you planning to expand on this project, or would you rather work on a completely new subject?
Yeah. So currently I'm writing a few other films that are veteran centric. They're not necessarily war films, but so many people have basically shown their interest in, me turning this into a feature film. So that's something I would absolutely love to do down the road. I think the time filming it was amazing, and if we got to do it for a longer period of time, I think I would have, an amazing time.
So, which films that came out before your production were major inspirations for your style and for the content of your short film?
I really loved. I mean, I mainly took inspiration from World War II films because, that's what I grew up on. Saving Private Ryan was probably the biggest one. It's probably my favorite film of all time. And then Band of Brothers, of course. And then as far as World War I goes, I love just the visuals of the trench in Paths of Glory by Kubrick. I wanted to sort of get some of those tracking shots as you go through the trench. We only had 165 feet of trench, unlike, a lot of these bigger budget films. So I had to work with what I had, but, I wanted to sort of recreate that sort of pathway through the trench.
And this set you speak about, the trench, was this already installed somewhere, a part of an open air museum?
Yeah, aside from being the director and producer, writer, I also was the set designer. And we got
you were the guy with the shovel.
Yeah, we got access to film it on my friend's grandfather's farmland in upstate New York, and basically within a 3-week time frame, I rented an excavator, and my construction dug it up for me, and then I spent weeks out there with my father in the blazing heat, and a couple of my friends came and helped out, and we just designed the trench, filled sandbags, put up barbed wire, put the wooden planks on the ground. And then I also had a secondary set designer who helped me do like the artillery piece and the officer shack, really design those to make them beautiful and realistic looking.
And not to spoil us or anything, but if you were to make a feature film out of this short film project, what would be the areas or genres you were fascinated in to expand this film so far? Because I'm assuming this film would be the baseline and probably be reshot, and then you'd expand around this.
Right, that's a good question. So for me, there's a couple aspects. I would love to delve more into the characters themselves because, the film itself is only 12 and a half minutes. We didn't really get to learn, any of their backstories or what drives the characters and their friendship in the trench, which really is the backbone of what drives the main character into fulfilling this role as the message runner and wanting to help his guys out. And I also would love to expand on the battles because, as it turns out, I was supposed to have a much larger battle, which would have made the film actually a little bit longer, but I ran into conflicting issues with a lot of the reenactors that I had hired to be there for the battle scene to sort of take up that space and have like a very large battle. Only one out of about 30 people showed up, so I had to make do with the actors and stuff that I had. And aside from that, I would also love to expand upon the whole mythological paranormal aspect to it, because there's a little bit of a horror element with the film, but it's more symbiotic or symbolism. But I wanted to really make it more of like a horror aside from just a war film. Just to put those layers of sort of horror films in there, to sprinkle that in and expand upon that.
But you said a supernatural kind of horror.
Yeah.
Okay. But that's definitely a new take on this scenario. Cool. And what else would be interesting lessons you learned from working with people who I assume were also interested in history and reenactors? And you mentioned a big artillery piece that was probably still maintained and kept throughout all the years by some enthusiasts. Can you tell us a bit more about collaborating with other history nerds, so to say?
Yeah, so I had a lot of other veterans work on the film with me who I know are huge history buffs, and they were so enthusiastic to be part of it. A couple of them played soldiers, and then one of them actually played the mythological Hun at the end of the film, who, you know, is the Grim Reaper taking the form of a German soldier. And there was a couple people who came from my college who were, you know, history buffs that, you know, wanted to take part in it. And the artillery piece actually was built from the ground up. It wasn't an actual real piece from history. So the wagon wheels that were attached to it were, but the rest of it was completely recreated from scratch. My co-set designer did an incredible job making it, and it looked great in the film. So I'm very happy about that.
Now, with your filmmaking passion sparked by this project, are you more interested in advancing your own career, so to say, or would you also spread out and collaborate on other people's projects, which are likely set in a similar background?
Yeah, so I'm mainly focusing on my own directing career. That's just always been my passion in life. I've been, you know, writing a ton of films that I plan on making into feature films. And I do love to collaborate with other filmmakers, and I gladly take part in being crew member on other people's films. I've done plenty since we filmed The Hun, and I just love the filmmaking process, just being a part of it, being a part of a team, and just being on that journey with people through the creative process, and, you know, working through problems and adversities to make something beautiful.
Would you say you've had a bit more of a struggle than you initially expected, or were you supported to the best of people's abilities in your area, in your surrounding, and by everyone you asked to participate on the project? Was the reception of your film engaged one, so to say?
Do you mean as far as crew members or audience?
We usually ask this question regarding both the audience and the your whole environment, which enabled you to produce the film.
Well, I consider it a creative, collaborative film from the get-go, because I had to raise this money through Kickstarter to make it. Basically, this was one of my like intro films because I was still a student at Emerson College. I really hadn't showed any of my other short films out into the world. I didn't, like, nobody who knew me really knew, besides the people I went to school with, knew that I was a filmmaker. And I sort of just let my passion out there and show people what I wanted to make and set out to do. And luckily, the community around me and my friends and family just believed in me, and whether they believed in the project or not, or whether I would pull it off, they saw how passionate I was about it, and they believed in me and donated to the project. We ended up raising $23,800 to make it, which I found to be incredibly challenging to do as somebody who didn't have any work that I was showing for myself originally. And I basically got amazing reception from everybody, saying how incredible the film was and how impressed they were with what I was able to do with such a small budget. And since then, I think the community has really backed me in being sort of this resident filmmaker of the area. And now any projects I make, they want to be a part of, and they want to be on my team in a sense. I always try to say that, you know, even with the cast and crew being a collaborative process, the community itself is a collaborative process, and I couldn't do it without them. So I want them to know that they're part of this team, and we're making something together. Sorry about the dog in the background.
Yeah, never mind. So this being your first bigger film project, I understood that right? You probably made the most out of the money by doing as many tasks on the filmmaking set yourself as possible. Which responsibilities would you give to other people in your next project?
So that was the thing, is like with this film, I took on more than I probably should have, but it being such a passion project and me knowing just sort of truly exactly what I wanted, I felt like I should have taken this bigger role in, getting things done, and I knew that I could do it, so I just did it. But for these future films that I'm working on, I'm basically delegating everything else besides directing and writing to other people, especially producing. I feel like I'm a pretty good producer, but I absolutely hate it. I don't want a part of it. I just want to be, on set creating and being in the set there, just getting the film done rather than all the pre-production work of raising the money and doing all the other stuff. Obviously I'll help with it, but I don't want to be the person leading the charge, because it's such a difficult job being a producer. It's daunting, so I give a lot of producers respect for how hard they work.
So you already said you want to keep on working with veterans and in this approximate time frame. Would you also consider doing documentaries with probably narrative and reenactment parts, or is your heart more into making narrative films altogether?
So I did have some ideas for documentaries I would like to make. I think there's some compelling stories out there that are like a little bit more untold, and there's some things that just like with my own personal experience, like with the Marine Corps, I think that I could make a stellar documentary about. So that's something I'd consider down the road to do. But mainly, I would say that I am a narrative film director. I just want to create, dramatic stories and, tell something new that, might not be true, or it might be based on something true, but tell a more dramatic story.
The combination of your backgrounds being a filmmaker and also a military veteran is probably not a usual one. Do you have any resources that other filmmakers probably wouldn't have with working with the military? We often hear that they let some filmmakers work with their equipment or their museum artifacts or on their areas or something like that.
So when I made this film, I didn't really have any resources as far as like, tangible stuff that I could physically use. I did find resources relatively recent that the Marine Corps can provide to filmmaking military veterans as far as access to bases and equipment for future projects. So, I saved all that information ready to go for my future work, because I'm definitely going to be using it. But in making this film, I would say I just took inspiration from people like Dale Dye, who was the military advisor to films like Saving Private Ryan, Platoon. I took inspiration from him because he used his military knowledge to make those films as accurate as possible in a time when, so many other war films came out that didn't care to be accurate and in telling, what it was actually like in battle and stuff like that. And that's why, we've had the success that like Saving Private Ryan had, like, these old World War II vets had to walk out of the theater a lot of the times because it was so realistic. And that's the kind of realism that I want to capture in my film. So I use a lot of my military knowledge, and I treat the film set and the actors like it would be real life. And I try to put them in the role as much as possible. So I don't necessarily do like a boot camp on set, like Dale Dye did, but I try to give them as much background information as possible to get the best result.
All right. Thank you very much, Tyler. We're nearing the end of our interview. If you have any further anecdotes you'd like to share, then please.
I would just like to say thank you so much for having me be a part of this whole thing. I'm honored to take part in the film festival, and I can't wait to see the other films and, just basically learn so much about their projects and see the kind of inspirations they had.
Well, thank you for those kind words. And we also are looking forward to seeing your future historical film projects, hopefully in our festival as well. Yeah. And absolutely, obviously, you and all the people you worked with are very much invited to watch all the other projects. And maybe there are some new contacts that you can derive from the experience, because filmmaking, especially with a lower budget and in a ambitious historical setting, usually requires extensive collaboration. So,
Right.
well, thank you for your time, Tyler, and
Thank you so much.
we'll see your film, The Hun, on our festival.
All right, can't wait. Thank you so much.